There's nothing more powerful than imagination. It can shape the fabric of reality, transforming everything you may think you know. But as with any power of such magnitude, it's unpredictable.
To think that Dead by Daylight is approaching its 10th anniversary is beyond wild. Though it may not boast the same numbers as bigger live service titles like Fortnite or Warframe, Dead by Daylight has amassed a colossal player base composed of fans from all corners of horror. But what makes this game's current status in online gaming even crazier is how it even managed to get here in the first place. Welcome to MojoPlays! My name is Ty, and today we're taking a look at how Dead by Daylight began and what led it to becoming a tour de force in online gaming and the world of horror. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Not to start things up with an overly extensive history lesson, but Behaviour Interactive used to be a significantly smaller studio, and it was for several years. With the exception of its first game, the PS1 platformer named Jersey Devil, Behaviour Interactive specialized more in licensed games back when it was known as Artificial Mind and Movement. You may have played some of their games before without even realizing it. Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters, The Grinch, Scooby-Doo Unmasked, Teen Titans, Monster House, and because I know our editor here is going to say something, they are also responsible for Ed, Edd and Eddy, The Misadventures.
Surely you've just hands like a baby, Ed boy. Only after you have toiled in filth like the son of a shepherd can you use such a machine. Be gone!
Jeez, what's with that guy?
But those are just a small handful of the many licensed games Behaviour worked on back in the day. Matthew Cote, the head of external partnerships for Behaviour Interactive, even mentioned this history in an interview with us back in August 2025. Said Cote,
"We had a great reputation among the developers and the licensors, the Disneys and THQs,
Yes.
and who else that needed games, knew Behaviour. We had a great reputation, but players had no idea who we were."
this lengthy history of making licensed games would, unbeknownst to Behaviour, lay the seeds for success with DBD. But if the experience were the seeds, then The Soil was a rather obscure title released all the way back in 2010. Naughty Bear was arguably the studio's most ambitious game at the time, as it was exploring the concept of reverse horror in video games, an idea that was rarely ever entertained in video games at the time. Described as, quote, a Saturday morning cartoon gone horribly wrong, end quote, Naughty Bear tasked players with terrorizing a jolly island of colorful, cotton-filled bears in various ways. Hide in bushes to observe the bears from afar, sabotage items to hinder their activities, and commit nefarious deeds to drive them to the brink of insanity. If you wanted to be among the best players, you had to become a true terror as quickly as possible to maximize your score.
Are you going to be all right, Naughty Bear? I suppose you will be.
But if Naughty Bear's single-player campaign was The Soil, then its multiplayer side was the cement, the foundation for Behaviour Interactive. Those wanting some PvP action could jump online and play different game modes based on classic deathmatch rules, capture the flag, and even a mode based on the Golden Gun mode from the N64 classic GoldenEye 007. The mode we want to draw attention to, however, was called Jelly Wars. This was an asymmetrical multiplayer mode where 3 players were tasked with gathering ingredients while a 4th player hunted them down as Naughty Bear. Although, this mode was rudimentary in its design, as Naughty could be easily bullied in most situations. Kinda hard for the lone wolf to defend himself from a team of 3. Nevertheless, there was an idea for something decent, something that could become bigger than it was here. Behaviour Interactive continued working as a contract developer, making games with a variety of licenses and taking on projects for various publishers. But in between projects, they tinkered with a few ideas here and there. One of them was the concept of an asymmetrical multiplayer game almost similar to the Jelly Wars mode we had seen in Naughty Bear, and it was made by the same exact team that was responsible for Naughty Bear. 4 players must work together to repair generators in order to escape. Escape from what, though? Well, escape from a 5th player who was roaming the map and hunting all of them down. This was Dead by Daylight, and it was unlike any other game the industry had seen before 2016. Admittedly, it was rough around the edges when it came to animations and level design, but it was a horror game that allowed friends to work together or scare the crap out of each other. It was enough to catch the attention of big YouTubers and streamers such as Markiplier, and enough to attract tens of thousands of players early on. Chandler Riggs himself was enamored with the game very early on in its infancy. Said Riggs, quote,
games. Yeah, it was mostly, it was just me and 2 other friends that played, so there was always a random, and we would always dog on the random. Always, that was our, collective person to shout at and be angry with, aside from the killer, of course. Yeah, I mean, some of the best times playing games were just awesome, crazy escapes, or, pulling yourself off the hook, and going and jumping in the hatch, and, it was just awesome times.
Was it enough to call it a success? Maybe. Dead by Daylight was made on a pretty measly budget compared to most games at the time, and the plan was to throw the game out onto the market, make whatever money it could for Behaviour, and then we all move on with our lives. Except we didn't. Not when new killers and survivors were getting added soon after launch. While The Nurse would serve as an interesting kickoff for this post-launch life, DBD garnered more attention with its second expansion, the Halloween chapter. Even more folks began checking out the game now that they were told that they could play as Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. With his unique tier-based mechanics, Michael players could stalk survivors from a distance in order to make survivors become exposed, forcing them to be instantly downed when hit. It perfectly incorporated the horror of the original Halloween movie with video game design elements. Even the classic music stings accompanied Michael whenever he ascended or descended a tier. For the next year or two, the player count was somewhat stagnant. Dead by Daylight would continue seeing licensed IPs and would soon invite Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street series, Amanda Young from the Saw movies, and introduce a new character to don the Ghostface mask from Scream. The game even got Silent Hill's Pyramid Head and Heather Mason in 2020. However, it wasn't until early 2021 when Behaviour Interactive really saw DBD take off with all guns blazing. In April 2021, Dead by Daylight got massive exposure to an entirely new audience when Capcom and Behaviour announced that Resident Evil was making its way into the fog. The series that made survival horror gaming was finally joining the legends of horror movies and TV shows. After that announcement, the player count grew in a way DBD nor Behaviour had ever seen before. Personal note, yours truly had already been playing the game for a few months by this point, and the announcement was everything I could have wanted. So, big Resident Evil fan, just got into Dead by Daylight, I'm sold. The player base grew even further when DBD got a second Resident Evil expansion the following year. Not only could you play as Nemesis, Jill, or Leon now, but you can also play as Rebecca, Ada, and Wesker as well.
Let's finish this.
Since then, Behaviour Interactive was managing to acquire more and more licenses to cram into the fog. From Chucky and Pinhead to the Xenomorph and Demogorgon, every new chapter felt like a scramble to make the ultimate video game that celebrates horror across every form of entertainment. How exactly, though, is Behaviour managing to justify all of these crazy crossovers to be under one roof? Well, there's a simple narrative trick that Kote explained to us very clearly in that interview.
There's a good story about one time when that thing sort of crystallized in my head, and we were talking to the people responsible for Silent Hill, who were creating the chapter at that time, and they were telling us, in the lore, Pyramid Head and Shell have never been together. Like, those two are not part of the same thing. You can't have them side. We're like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, Dead by Daylight, like, imagine you play all the Silent Hill game. Then you watch the movies, and you read the books and whatever. And then you go to sleep and you have a nightmare about it. All of these things are going to be jumbled together. The entity creates the reality of Dead by Daylight out of thoughts and fears and memories of people, but it's not the real thing.
Right.
It is a representation of the thing, and that got them on board.
It's almost hard to imagine that there was one IP that DBD was still missing over the next couple of years, and it was the most requested IP that Behaviour had ever received throughout the game's history. August 2024 marked the 10th anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, the indie horror game that became a phenomenon with its terrifying Chuck E. Cheese gone wrong premise. To mark the occasion, series creator Scott Cawthon took to social media to tell fans to expect an announcement from someone. It wasn't long until Behaviour announced that Five Nights at Freddy's was indeed coming to Dead by Daylight. And sure enough, when Springtrap and Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria released in June 2025, hundreds of thousands of players were rushing in to learn the game just to play as Springtrap, or Glitchtrap, or Matthew Lillard. Although, sometimes it's not enough to just contact a licensor and say, hey, we want to do this thing with your IP, is that cool with you? Sometimes you need a bit more of a push from fans, such as Rick Grimes for DBD. Rick had begun as a massive fan of The Walking Dead before entering the fog in DBD.
I caught up just in time for season 3, and then from there, it kind of just became a world I fell in love with.
Having been a massive fan of the show and the comics, Rick began a move to get The Walking Dead into Dead by Daylight, starting with getting Chandler Riggs, who played Carl in the show, to post a cameo? Riggs was not only surprised, but excited to be able to geek out about DBD in public. Needless to say, the post caught fire quickly, which put Behaviour a little bit on edge, as Kote explained.
And interacting with these kind of things is always very delicate, because if it's something that's in the works, it's sort of touchy to respond. But if it's not, and then we respond like nothing's happening, is it more telling? So we should act as if it's not coming and just interact with anyway. It's really delicate. It's a weird dance we have with especially very prolific content creators or people who are super engaged, like you.
Yeah.
Like we want to, because that enthusiasm, that passion, it's fuel, baby.
Indeed, the addition of Rick, Michonne, and Daryl speaks volumes about how colossal DBD has become in horror gaming. It's almost impossible to ignore at this point. But looking back, it's not surprising that Behaviour Interactive managed to turn DBD into a successful live service game. If anything, you could say it was a happy accident. As Kote had mentioned to us, the studio already had tons of experience developing games based on various IPs between movies and TV shows. So what exactly was the difference between doing that and adapting IPs in a totally original work? Admittedly, you can say the big difference is wrestling with spaghetti code, but you get what we're saying. It's still interesting seeing how it went from dormant horror icons like Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger to modern giants like Resident Evil and Five Nights at Freddy's. It's even more fascinating how DBD went from a simple experimental title that was just meant to pay the bills and then move on, to it's now Behaviour's entire source of revenue. Almost.
You'll be my next creation.
So the only question now is, who's next? Who else is the entity going to wrangle into the fog? At the time of this video, we recently saw Rick, Michonne, and Daryl from The Walking Dead get added. But who else is left? The Predator? Art the Clown? Jaws? Or maybe a certain hockey mask-wearing water zombie finally joins the fray? Next year's 10th anniversary will be one to watch. We managed to ask Kote about Behaviour's plans for DBD's 10th anniversary, such as, I don't know, are there plans for a fan event?
But we're gonna do something big. I think we're gonna do something big in Montreal, and I'm gonna leave it at that for now.
Well, in that case, time to get the passports ready. Was there a license that got you into Dead by Daylight?
Because even after all the death, decay, and darkness, I still remember exactly who I am.
But let us know what you think down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to MojoPlays for more great videos every day.